Pleasure to welcome you in Garage. Let's hope this is not the last time you're coming. A few days ago, on the 12th of June, we had a big event. We opened the new building of Garage Museum of Contemporary Art, and we're happy because of this and excited at the same time because we have lots of plans that need to be fulfilled, and our plans are getting more serious and more ambitious. The main areas of our work are in this or that way reflected in the exhibition projects you will see in Garage New Space. If you already had a chance to see what's going on on our main site, you probably saw a very big space which was allocated to the field research. I will tell you in details about this program, and let me say that during this program we implemented maybe the longest term project in the history of contemporary art. The author is Taryn Simon. So the field research is the research program of Garage Museum of Contemporary Art. It started 2 years ago. The main point of this program is that Garage is initiating and supporting some projects. They can be suggested by artists, curators, or people from various cultural areas. And these projects are in this or that way related to Russian history, culture, and many other things. And this research can bring to an exhibition, and sometimes it may bring to something which goes beyond any possible borders. And in this way, it expands our vision of what the contemporary art is. The talk today is related to a unique object. You will find it in Garage, in the bookshop, and the main heroes, the main participants of our meeting today are Taryn Simon, the artist photographer, and I think she's one of the most significant artists of her generation. Her exhibitions took place in all the significant art institutions and spaces, and it is a great privilege and honor for us that this exhibition laid the foundations for our large cooperation, and very soon I hope we'll have an exhibition of Taryn Simon. And on my right hand is Nikita Medyantsev. I have to read your position. Nikita Medyantsev is the head of PR department of the Federal State Agency called the National Operator for Handling the Radioactive Wastes. Nikita has this simple yet quite complicated position, and he is the embodiment of the huge Rosatom corporation today for us. Why do we have this seemingly contradictory group of people here? What is behind my back, and what is this Black Square about? Let me start from the brief description of what the project by Taryn Simon is. What do we have to deal with Rosatom, radioactive waste, etc. When you go to the bookstores and when you pass by our museum wall, you suddenly find this niche. The depth is 30 centimeters. So what happens is the following. Due to our collaboration with Radon Federal State Enterprise, and upon the initiative of Taryn Simon, we did the following. We have glazed a certain amount of radioactive waste. In this volume, we have inserted a capsule with a letter to the future generation. Tarya wrote this letter. And in May 2015, at Radon Enterprise, there was the verification session when we did everything and we documented it photographically and on the video. So then these wastes, this certain amount of waste, will be stored for a long time in a special storage in radon plant. And in about 800,000 years, when this volume stops being hazardous for humans and environment, it will be located into the niche that was prepared for it in Garage Museum of Contemporary Art. No matter how strange and utopic this idea sounds to you now, today we'll try to figure out what has really happened. What are the questions and challenges raised due to this project? And what are the ideas behind it? And how should we treat the museum and the function of the museum? What do we mean by an artistic work in this context? What is the role of the artist? How to collaborate with a huge state corporation? What is the model of these relations? I guess that we will have not enough time for everything, but let's try to outline the framework of our dialogue. And as you see, we have to discuss one and the same field, but from two different positions. The position of an artist, a very broad position, let me say, and the second position of a large state corporation dealing with something significant. Very often it's a state secret, and we'll try to find some common points in these two approaches and try to understand what has happened. The slideshow behind me will be going on during our talk, and let me tell you, you are the only unique viewers of this vitrification process so far. This is the first step. We're vitrified, but we have to go to radon 1, take or a special stage on sure, and to finally see where it until the moment it will arrive to garage. In this particular case, the documentation is witnessing to the fact that we have really done this. Let's start. After this long introduction of mine, I would like to, first of all, ask Tarya a question and ask for us to understand the origin of your interest to the question of radioactive wastes and their disposal. Can I please ask you to tell us why are you interested in the concealed things and hidden things that never go on the surface, the appearance of which in the open public space is quite problematic? Why is it so that initially the interest to these significant things, they are significant but they are never public? Where did you have this interest arising from?
Hi, thanks for having me here. I'm a bit consumptive at the moment, so I'm going to be coughing throughout this, so forgive me. But the history of my work has always been about things that are sort of out of view and hidden or have fallen out of popular consciousness. So it can be an intentional hide or just a slippage in our interest. And in this particular project, I was most interested in the sort of psychological abstractions that can result from man's very clear and defined inventions, because the invention of radioactive material is one that happened in a very scientific form and then creates all of this unbelievable ambiguity and abstract thought, and brings up an unimaginable future and confronts all these issues of time and purpose. So, but in general, my interest in the hidden or things like that was always to confront this divide between public and expert access to both sites and knowledge, and where those boundaries are and how those boundaries allow for certain agendas to proliferate, and also either incite investigation and sometimes rebellion, or create a more stable space. So.
How did this idea emerge? Let me tell you also that our project was developed for a long time, and this was actually lasting for 6 months, related to different documentation issues, etc. Why? And let me tell you why we chose vitrification as a method. But initially, our project started from the idea that this volume of radioactive waste can be done on Mayak enterprise. Why Mayak? Where did you get this idea about Mayak from? Because let me tell you again that Taryn really wanted this to happen in Mayak, because the place itself has a very powerful and potentially rich history. And just tell us why Mayak, please.
Well, Mayak to me represented this site that I could get very little information about. It's sort of not disclosed on maps. It has a hidden address. It has a buried history, and the history that is available is quite complex, and one that also has a complex relationship revealed between the United States and Russia. And it's also the site of the creation of the first Soviet atomic bomb. So I was deeply interested in discovering this place that is literally absent from any sort of global view, global geographic view. And I won't get into all the details of the history, but it was...
Здесь я думаю, что мы сможем спросить у Никиты.
I think we can ask Nikita. Nikita, please tell us, what is Mayak? And are they doing vitrification of radioactive wastes in Mayak? What is going on and what was going on in Mayak? And of course, we are really interested in the question related to the secrecy, because Mayak seems to be one of the most secret enterprises in Russia. Yes, indeed, it is really so. And this is one of the most secreted enterprises, perhaps. But not now. It used to be an extremely secret place in the past. Because now, year by year, more and more people come to Mayak, journalists, scientists, environmentalists, and quite recently, 3 days ago, the forum called Dialogue in Chelyabinsk was over. I was there, and half of the debates were related to Mayak, its past, present, and future. So what is vitrification? Let me say a couple of words about Mayak first. Yes, Mayak is the same age as the nuclear industry in Russia. The first atomic bomb was created in Mayak. This had its consequences in geopolitical and environmental sense, because the schedule was very tight. Within 4 years, the atomic bomb was created. And this led to the formation of a large amount of radioactive waste. And they went to the reservoirs such as the artificial lakes and Karachay Lake. And this led to the development of the lion's share of radioactive wastes that we have in Russia today. They are now concentrated in Karachay lake and in the system of water reservoirs called Techi. As for vitrification, the first and second class radioactive wastes are stored there. According to the Russian system of classification, they are highly radioactive waste, and the second class is the medium level of radioactivity. Now we have the temporary storage area of class 1 and class 2 radioactive waste there in Mayak, and one of our biggest tasks is to create the final repository of radioactive waste in Russia. If we are talking about class 1 and class 2, we are not planning to store it finally in Mayak, while the third class of radioactive waste will be, among other areas, be buried in Mayak as well. Can you please turn on the image number 1?
Sorry, I'm just curious, where will class 1 and 2 be buried when not at Mayak?
Пока точно не можем сказать, потому что...
We can't tell you for sure now. I can tell you we have been looking for a suitable place for 20 years. The proposed place was found in Krasnoyarsky Krai, near Zheleznogorsk, another secret plant which is now opened up. It also belongs to the system of Rosatom. And on this place that we discovered, let's say, 5 years ago, and we did the feasibility study, we found out that the first and second classes of radioactive waste can be stored there. On this place, we are going to build an underground research laboratory. This laboratory has to study everything, and they have to prove that it is possible to store the radioactive waste there. If the laboratory says yes, then yes. If no, then we will either make the final repository of class 3 and 4 there, or we will continue the research and we will do the technical research there. We'll do a number of technical procedures that should be done during the work with class 1 and class 2 radioactives.
In the absence of current storage and vitrification happening there, what happens to the current class 1 and class 2 nuclear waste that needs to be processed?
They are on temporary storage now in Mayak.
So they're still vitrifying?
Of course, and they will be vitrified. At the moment, there is no other technology to store the first class waste. Vitrification is a must. Let us go back to the photo number 1. And Taryn, can you please tell us what this image means? Where did you film it? And let me once again mention that Taryn is interested in places, phenomena, and things that are hidden from the public eye, let's say. And for us, these are unresearched and very vague things, unknown things for us. What is this photo about? Can you please tell us?
So this photograph is of a nuclear waste encapsulation facility at Hanford site in the United States, which is in Washington State. I'm sure you're familiar with Hanford, and because it's actually interesting, Russia and the United States sort of operate in collaboration regarding waste and the decommissioning of a lot of nuclear material, because it is this thing that sort of transcends politics and boundaries. So this particular photo was, I went into their storage facility and was interested in this new form of light, so that I'd never seen or experienced before, called the Cherenkov effect, which occurs when nuclear waste encapsulated in stainless steel capsules is submerged in water, and the water is meant to protect humans from the radioactive implications that could occur. So an unshielded capsule would kill someone instantly, according to Hanford, and the water somehow negates that reality. And I happened to find one area amongst the 1900 capsules that were beneath water at Hanford that resembled a map of the United States in its formation, and took the photograph, which was a very long exposure. In fact, it took me over an hour to take each photograph, each frame. And yeah. Do you store like this at MAEC?
Отходы. Here I have to specify and say that the thing is, we have differences in the US and in Russia in understanding what the radioactive wastes are. This is the difference in perceiving what radioactive material is. Thing is, in Russia, the radiological wastes, nuclear wastes, are the material that we take out from the reactor and then we cool it down in the basin. In Russia, we have a slightly different concept because we are processing the spent fuel and we use it for the production of the new fuel. While what is left, the real waste after processing of the spent fuel, is 5-7% of the material, and this 5-7% is what we consider the class 1 radioactive waste, while the rest goes back and is used. The storage in the reservoirs is taking place either in the nuclear power plants, in the special storages, or in the mining plant of Zheleznogorsk. And the contract I mentioned previously was also executed, implemented in this Zheleznogorsk mining plant.
At one point, when we were communicating with MAEC about the creation of the Black Square, I received a letter from one of the engineers who was working there, and he sent me a graphic design that he created with the Black Square submerged beneath water and a sun and some cartoon water. And then he also sent me a black square where he had supposedly dipped his finger in a body of water at MAEC, and he wrote me a message on the black square and then delivered me an X-ray, sort of a lead sheet that I would place over the black square to reveal the message that he had written me. And so I was wondering, is that a result of something like this from Cherenkov radiation, or is that something else? And I never quite got any specificity on the origins, or not that you would necessarily know, but.
You know, since MAEC is working with the highly active waste and with the medium active waste, of course, all the precaution measures are important, and they are very well known today, and they are used. I think that's why there was a problem with MAEC, because there it wouldn't be possible. All the processes are automated, while in Radon there was an opportunity to work with this material, and for us and for our future generations it's more optimistic, let's say, because the cube that we formed in in Radon in about 1,000 years will be harmless, and we can really have it in garage. So we were really happy that everything took place in Radon.
Well, me too, and I'm kind of dumbfounded that we're at this stage after 3 years of all different stops and starts. I think it's pretty incredible that we've made this piece together. But I was curious when you say the prediction of it being acceptable to be amongst humans and be exhibited on the walls of the garage in 1,000 years. How do we know that when the radioactive material hasn't even been discovered for, I mean, it's been less than 100 years, so, and far less. So how are we able to project into such an unimaginable future and timeline? I was just curious what mathematics are behind that, or what leaps of faith are behind that, and how you navigate through those predictions.
Дело в том, что
You know, Radon is dealing with average and low active radioactive waste, the short-living radioactive waste, let's say. The short ones are with a period of disintegration of 30 years. If we're talking about low concentration. If the concentration is high, then we provide 300 years of disintegration. In 300 years, the radioactivity will be not more than the acceptable ultimate concentration that we have in our legislation today. If we're talking about high concentration of radioactive waste, in 1,000 years, for sure, it will be brought to the normal level of radioactivity. To develop Taryn's question, the whole history of disposing of the radiological waste is related to the far-fetched future. The ideas about this future are so vague and intangible that time and the course of time is very much complicated. So for us, it's more like popular futurology. How do we understand that behind these ideas we have the serious scientific research? Because talking about hundreds and thousands of years seems to be unimaginable, and for us it's like scientific fiction. Very often we cannot plan our daily life 1 week ahead. I apologize for this simple comparison, but that's the way it is. But how can we manage our unimaginable future? In fact, the timeline is built by the science, by physics, because we are determining the behavior of radioactive substances, because the period of disintegration is not changing. It is well known among all the radioactive materials, with the accuracy to hours, minutes, etc. It depends on how long-living the material is. This is the first thing. While from the perspective of the history, let me bring you a short example. I named you 300 years. In 300 years, the average and low activity wastes will come to the state which is equal to the environment in terms of its radioactivity. St. Petersburg, as far as I know, will celebrate 300 years of Kunstkamera. This is one of the first museums in Russia. So 300 years. In 300 years, we'll still have garage, yeah? We hope we will live even longer. We hope to live even 100 years more or so. Yeah, what I mean is after the appearance of the first museum in Russia, 300 years later, garage was opened. So this much about the low and medium activity wastes. For them, from engineering point of view, there is no problem to create the areas of disposal that would be stable and would be isolated, would isolate these materials from biosphere for 300, 400 and 500 years. This is something the builders and the science are capable of doing. As for the long-living, medium-active and high-active wastes, we have a different approach here. The International Atomic Energy Agency has only one rule only one possibility to bury these wastes in the stable, deep geological formations. Some countries follow the way of the disposal in the clay formation. Some bury these materials in the rock, but the depth of allocation of these materials is from 500 meters to 1 kilometer. They should be disposed of in the stable rocks, in the stable geological formations that remained unchanged for millions of years. For example, the soil, the formation that we found in Krasnoyarsk, it was a very, a very firm stone, a very firm rock, and it hasn't been changing for millions of years. Now all we need to do is to study the porosity of this material for water not to penetrate into it, because water is the only enemy for the repositories, because it can take out the radioactive wastes from there. When we started talking with Radon Engineering Group, and when we were trying to study how the storage is being done, we were told about the so-called multi-barrier protection system. One of the protection levels was the clay formation, because where radon is located, the soil is very clayish, and this is not by chance. When the soil is rich in clay, it doesn't allow water to run underground. By the way, on one of the photos I will show you soon, when you see this wonderful landscape coated with gravel and it looks like a hill, this is the old repository. Not the old repository, but it's just a repository of the wastes that have been buried long time ago. And there is an absolute illusion of a natural formation, as if you are walking in a forest and suddenly there is a hill in front of you. And the surprising thing is that at some moment we come closer and we see the plastic film. That is to say, this is the hill covered with a plastic film. There is a special drainage system there for the rainwater to drain, and there is a film that doesn't let water to go into the soil. I hope you'll see this photo soon. Meanwhile, let me raise one more point related to the international cooperation in the disposal of radiological waste, radioactive waste. Taryn and I will discuss and agreed that this is one of the few areas of human activity today which is like space, and which is about unimaginable space and time. And it makes different representatives of different political systems, countries, etc., to be united and to work for the security of peace in the world and safety. How is the international cooperation being done in this field? In a very simple way. All the countries are working only with their own radioactive wastes. The transport and movement of radiological wastes, I don't mean here the spent fuel, by the way, because the spent fuel, sometimes according to the agreements, can be moved from one country to another where it will be processed, while what we call the radiological wastes has, at least in our country, but also in the majority of countries, it has no chance to be taken from one country to another, because this will be considered to be a crime. As for the technical questions, here we, of course, in technical questions, we have active collaboration, especially between the countries that have approximately similar geological conditions for the repositories. And yes, we collaborate a lot in technological processes and the disposal. Well, in classes 3 and 4, we can't speak about disposal because here I would rather say that we have active exchange of knowledge and technology. In classes 1 and 2, we have more secrecy because it is related to the volumes of these radioactive wastes. Because if you know the amount of waste, you can calculate and understand what the country is working with at the moment, including the defense area. But in terms of technology and science, we have constant collaboration, including with the one within the framework of the International Atomic Energy Agency. It has several task forces that discuss the standards of security and safety when handling different radioactive wastes and when deploying different technologies.
I just wanted to ask, because I don't understand, what the vitrification does to, like, how do you make something that has nuclear waste unharmful? How does it actually work by vitrifying something and then burying it?
Thank you for the question. Vitrification is a technical process. It doesn't automatically make radioactive wastes harmless. It is called the glass matrix. The matrix can be made of glass, made of concrete. For classes 1 and 2 of radiological waste, we have glass matrices. The radioactive wastes are mixed into the glass. Glass is the first safety barrier that doesn't allow the radionuclides to go out. Sooner or later they will go out of these limits, but then this glass is put in a number of capsules made of steel. One steel box in another steel box, the other one in another. Then you put everything in the transportation container, then you put it in the in a regular container, and then in a transportation container. When they are transported to the final repository place, there is an automatic procedure of taking all these capsules out of all these boxes back, and then the radioactive wastes are allocated in a special hole or space which is carved in the rock. This process is not an easy one. I'm just describing it with simple words. And of course, the radionuclides will go beyond the borders of glass and steel capsule, and then they will go to this bentonite. Bentonite is a special material. It looks like clay. It has a very high absorbing property, and it can retain very well the radionuclides. But in hundreds, thousands of years, the radionuclides will fall into these betonites, and then they will go into the rock. But in the course of time, the radioactivity of these nuclides will be falling and falling. The underground research laboratory that I mentioned in the beginning of the talk is aiming at finding out if these radioactive wastes will stop at the distance safe for the given biosphere, 500, 600 meters above this place.
Can I ask you a question about the color? Because obviously we're creating a black square here, which has associations to art and another history, but why is it black? Can you explain the blackness, and also if the blackness in your estimations will alter over time? What makes it black?
Вы
The absence of light. You're a photographer, aren't you? Absence of light makes it black. First of all, absence of light. There are no sun rays in it because radioactive wastes are inside. And these are not just radionuclides. These are particles of materials. And since this cube is quite large in its size, there is no light in it and there is no color, therefore.
But it's created above ground in light. So when it's exposed to light initially, it still maintains blackness. I was wondering if black is something that is coming from a response to the nuclear properties, or if that's part of the glass material that's put in with it. And also when you talk about the nuclides escaping over time, do you think that the color may transform? Or do we know?
I think it's worth finding out this thing. To be honest, I'm not so much ready for the deep discussion of technical processes, but let me promise you, I am familiar with the author of this technology, so let me go back to him and ask him these questions.
Okay, great. I'm not familiar either, even though we made it.
Я хочу просто
I'll try to make you meet him. Let me ask Taryn now. Well, Black Square XVII is the title of our work. What is Black Square XVII and what are the other 16 squares? And let me remind you that this year is 100th anniversary of Malevich's Black Square, and the entire world of culture is celebrating 100th anniversary of Malevich's Black Square.
The Black Square is, all the other black squares that exist in my project are photographic and textual at this point. So this is the first sculptural work. And this is the one that is really addressing very explicitly issues that Malevich presented when he created the Black Square, so issues of time, breaking into the fourth dimension, abandoning senses, going into other spaces, and mysticism and being sort of lost, and also this space of nothingness. And I mean, there are so many ambiguities that surround this black square we've created, and so many questions and unknowns about value, ownership. I mean, I wanted to actually ask you that, who in your mind, who owns this piece, right? Because the letter is inside it. We have this void at the garage that's awaiting it, with the promise that it will one day be there in 1,000 years, or the hope, the collaborative hope. I had this idea that I put down on paper that was translated and then presented to you. So there's all these, it confronts standard ideas of ownership in a way. I was sort of curious how you think about that.
In terms of ownership, Russian legislation says one thing. In a certain period of time, when radioactive wastes are given to the final repository, and the enterprise, let me not repeat its name, but it's national operator on handling the radiological wastes, the only responsible body that can make the final repository and is responsible for it, it has to monitor these radioactive burial places during the entire time of their existence. So I guess that this company has to exist for a long time, because the long-living radiological waste will be hazardous for millions of years. So yeah, that's the company, the agency, I think, will own this. This is the most optimistic business plan from all I have ever heard. You guarantee the existence of your company. In fact, when you go to the museum, You know, when we go to the museum, we solve a number of internal problems and we answer a number of internal questions because we reconsider what the museum space is. What should the museum store and what it shouldn't store. The question of explicitness, visibility of this or that object, the long-term storage of the waste. It resembles the same principle as library, museum, or an archive. You also have a system of storage. It has a number of functions and it is aiming at the preservation. To some extent, museum is doing pretty much the same, but with a more expanded function, let's say. That is to say, finding out what the functions of the museum are today was another benefit that we got from this project. So I want to say huge thanks to you and to Taryn for this opportunity to ask questions, and I hope we will continue and we'll have the second and third part of this project soon, and let's hope that we will be as optimistic as we are today. And let me express my gratitude to you again, because at different stages of being accepted to the secret places that don't exist on the map, you really helped us a lot. Many thanks for doing this. Dear audience, if you have any questions, you are free to ask them, and please use a microphone. Okay? Hello, I have a question to Taryn. My native city is Krasnoyarsk, and next to Krasnoyarsk they are going to bury the waste. Rosatom is a very doubtful organization, and let me tell you, the way they did the public hearings, they took, all the local newspapers are bought by Rosatom, and in the public hearings they invite their own employees to conduct the public hearings. Aren't you afraid to use Rosatom, a company with a doubtful reputation, for your project?
I recognize, I think in dealing with nuclear material, it's implied that there are so many complexities, and I'm of course engaging with any number of difficult narratives that started from the very day Marie Curie invented radioactive materials. So it's my interactions with Rosatom, in fact, have all been about an experiment of cross-cultural communication. So conveying something in English, having it then translated through various people and then presented to them and then back to me. And it has been this kind of unfolding story of that process. And so in terms of Rosatom's history itself and those sorts of specific complications, I mean, I don't know if you want to say something or how.
My question was a more specific question. Aren't you afraid that you have been used for an advertisement? They will say, hey, we are very nice guys. We collaborate with an American artist. In fact, Rosatom is a very closed corporation, and in the existing political system of Russia, they don't allow anybody to criticize their projects. They either say that this is a secrecy or the environmentalists are all bribed. So ethically speaking, from ethical point of view, aren't you afraid that Rosatom is going to abuse this cultural discussion for their own PR?
My opinion on sort of cultural boycott and these sorts of things and engaging with different politics and different narratives and exhibiting my work or collaborating in different arenas, I think can only lead to advancement. And I think boycott by artists is not as effective as engagement. And so all I can say is the way in which I'm using it, and which I think has many productive qualities. But I understand what you're saying, and it's something I grapple with all the time when exhibiting my work throughout the world in all different areas, so beyond this particular discussion. And I mean, that just comes down to a personal belief. And I always feel that my work, because of the backgrounds that are involved in each piece and the issues that I'm historically addressing, which hopefully you know, can always bring discussion, which is in fact the best way out of these sorts of difficulties that you're bringing up. So I don't see how my absence would lead to anything effective.
Yes, hi. So actually this question is, I'm kind of also referring to that idea, and this question is to both of you. So how would you see or describe the resonance between this project and the ideas or ambitions of creating in Russia a center of global nuclear energy infrastructure? And it would be interesting to hear the opinions of both of you and what you think about this.
Yes, I'm ready to say a few words. Thing is that, of course, there have never been existing any international center, or it will never exist. This is just a rumor spread in internet, nothing more. First of all, because radioactive waste cannot be brought in or brought out of Russia. Secondly, because the project of the international final repository in Krasnoyarsky Krai doesn't exist. We have a project of underground research laboratory, and the laboratory will have to find out if this object can exist in Krasnoyarsk or not. Nothing more. This is not the answer of your question, and I'm not going to answer. I just want to invite you to the public hearings we are going to have on the 24th of July in Zheleznogorsk, and to the debates that we will have in the coming 1.5 months in Krasnoyarsk and in Zheleznogorsk. If you don't need my invitation, what can I do? Why do you think we have fictitious hearings? You need to understand what Zheleznogorsk is. It's a town with two secret plants. One is producing satellites, the other one is dealing with nuclear programs. If people vote against at the public hearings, they will have no jobs. I'm sorry, what is the name of the... Who is doing the public hearings? Rosatom. No, the national operator for handling the radiological wastes. It is an industrial environmental company. Whether there is Rosatom or not, no, it is very important. Are you part of Rosatom? Yes, we're part of Rosatom. But let me finish my thought. You think that if it is part of Rosatom, then we shouldn't solve the problem of radioactive waste? No, I think that you need to conduct public hearings in Krasnoyarsk. It is located 100 kilometers away from Zheleznogorsk. In case of any disasters or failures, it will influence the ecology, the environment in Krasnoyarsk. But you are not doing this. No, it is not so. Let me explain. According to the Russian law, we have to conduct the public hearings in the municipality where we conduct our activity. For the last 2 years, we have been conducting these hearings and debates in Zheleznogorsk. I'm a journalist. I used to work as a journalist there for many years. You bought all the mass media. You know, the occasion why we are here is slightly different.
But I just want to say something. Because it's, I mean, all of this that's going on reveals precisely the difficulty with the invention that preceded all of us. And it just makes me think of, there's this very powerful video of Oppenheimer where he's recognizing what he's created in a very, myopic vision in a laboratory involving mathematics and intelligence and physics and all these theories, and then suddenly realizes and compares himself to Vishnu in the Bhagavad Gita, who takes on this multi-armed form to impress the prince, to incite him to operate in certain ways. And he realizes that he's become death, the destroyer of all worlds. And Oppenheimer is crying as he says this, and it's an acknowledgement of what he has created. So man has created this thing that is now a huge difficulty and full of unknowns and implications for people who are where it's going to be stored, and what do we do with all of this stuff? And vitrification is deemed the safest form of storage currently. But where do you put that, and how do those things operate? I know a lot of countries ship their waste elsewhere, and the site that I went to, Hanford site in the United States, like I said, is one of the most contaminated sites there, and it has huge implications on a river that travels throughout many states. And this is the result of man's inventions that existed in a box at one point. And so it's also about highlighting our need to recognize what we're doing at the time of doing it. But also, can you limit progress? Can you stop evolution? Is that the proper way? What do we do with this stuff? Which is exactly what you two are.
Any other questions? Yes. I have a short discussion to a different topic. I have a question to any speaker who would like to take this question. The square will live longer than me, than you, and probably it will live longer than Garage Museum. Probably it will live longer than all our country does. But I'm interested in if it will live longer than culture, will it live longer than our understanding of culture? Won't the Black Square disappear and the radioactive waste just will remain? This is the biggest question I asked myself when I looked at your work. I would like to hear your comment.
It's a complete possibility. And I think I've written a letter that goes inside a capsule that is encased within the Black Square. So you have storage of storage of storage, and then a piece of paper within all of this. And my letter is written in the English language because that's my first language. And who knows that English will be understood? Who's going to discover that letter? Is it going to be a human form? Are there, the next evolutionary steps, they talk about robots or rats. Rats actually makes a lot of sense to me right now in just taking an assessment of the global landscape. But these are the unknowns, and you're precisely right when you imagine the nuclear aspects remaining and the Black Square and the cultural associations disappearing. My letter itself, which lives within that Black Square in a steel capsule, cannot be seen from the outside. So the only evidence of something being within it and differentiating it from all the other stored materials are records like this talk, or writings about it, or perhaps internal documentation. So it's also about the power of record and instruction and intention, and how that remains attached or detached from what it was meant to be with. So you have all of these really vulnerable moving parts that have huge implications when you take them outside of just this artwork and then think about the ramifications of that on larger scales. All unanswerable questions.
Thank you. With your permission, I will add a few words too. I think that as long as the society exists, the culture exists too, and it can be more or less developed from our point of view, but this is a very subjective judgment of ours. But the society, of course, is either developing or declining or staying at the same level it is at the moment. I would like to bring a short example. Relatively recently, a few years ago, one man found an object. It was a radiationally hazardous object. How did he do this? His car had a detector of radioactive irradiation level, and when he was passing by a site, he saw this metering system showing him high level of radiation next to the car. He passed by, he saw the level dropped. He called the special services. The special services came and removed this radioactive, let's call it a waste, and they isolated it. Why am I saying this? This is happening today. We have all the possibilities to understand whether something we found is hazardous or not. We can measure the radiation level, we can conduct the research. And in the future, the society will either develop and then they will have a wider range of tools than we do in the future, or it will decline. If it develops, I will be quite happy. If it declines, then I'm happy too, because the radioactive wastes will be in the hardly accessible place beyond human grasp for these future declined generations. Shall we tell the story with Stalin's portrait?
So when we made our black square with the letter inside it, one of the workers at Radon told us a story about a portrait of Stalin that was given as a gift to him from Central Asia. And it was known to be this fantastical painting because it glowed in the dark, and hung on his wall for many years and found its way to a museum. And everybody was amazed by this, and then it was discovered only recently that it too was measuring on a radiometer to have high levels of radioactive waste in it, and is currently, I believe, in storage in the same place as our black square, correct? Yeah.
Это история 93-го года.
I have another similar example. The customs office often stops the cargoes, the products that were bought in foreign countries, and then they are brought in Russia. And very often there are watches with arrows that glow in the darkness. And there, sometimes they use radioactive substances to make these arrows glow. These types of watches were normally used in the submarines in aviation in the past, so that when at night the pilot is flying over the North Pole, he has no source of light, he will check what the time is, so on and so forth. So these kind of things are also confiscated by the customs office, and they are also disposed of at Rodon.
Еще какие-то вопросы?
Any other questions?
Не, просто не будет слышно переводчику, чтобы переводить.
Please speak on the microphone for us to hear the translation.
Good afternoon. This is a question for Taryn about her broader practice and how this work has had ramifications on her broader work. So in terms of the gaps you fill here, it's so fascinating. It's both looking at the risk society and the questions proposed by Giddens and Beck about technological progress and how society is informed about it. Also the gap between, I guess, the medium and the message, with the museum being this archival place where life is short and art is long. So I guess at this pivotal time in terms of the work that you do, how has this affected what you're doing next? What are you currently working on?
Well, this project actually, I feel like it's just it's in a very nascent state, in fact. So we've only revealed the wall. Working on a film right now and a much more elaborate presentation of the work in the background material that we're collecting. In fact, the piece is not done. The piece is cooling right now. We just vitrified it and we're waiting for its transfer to its burial site. So it's ongoing, and as you can see, we've mentioned all these kind of vulnerabilities along the way. This narrative is going to unfold for a long while, and hopefully I'll live for a portion of it to document it. I'm also working, one thing that has, this project collided with another project that I'm working on about the sort of history of man's involvement in the development of contracts, decrees, and treaties meant to influence the course of the world and evolution, and man's belief that he has control over that versus nature. And it's done through this form that involves flowers. That'll be at the garage in the near future. And that's more sculptural as well. So I've been more and more breaking away from the photographic form as the central piece, in fact. And I'm also working on a performance piece that deals with a lot of the issues we're discussing. And that'll be in New York and London.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Есть ли еще вопросы?
Any other questions?
Если вопросов нет,
If there are no more questions, may I kindly ask all those who haven't been in Garage Museum of Contemporary Art, the masterpiece of modern architecture, please do go there. We prepare special programs for you. And there will be special weekend programs. You will have pelmeni, you will play ping pong and see a lot of interesting things, and to spend good time in the new fascinating space. And please make sure you see Taryn Simon's special wall that will be filled, I wanted to say in the nearest future, but just in the future. Okay, do visit us, and thank you for your attention.